Report from Iron Mountain, Section 4, War and Peace as Social Systems. We have dealt only sketchily with proposed disarmament scenarios in economic analyses, but the reason for our seemingly casual dismissal of so much serious and sophisticated work lies in no disrespect for its competence. It is rather a question of relevance. To put it plainly, all these programs, however detailed and well developed, are abstractions. The most carefully reasoned disarmament sequence inevitably reads more like the rules of a game or a classroom exercise in logic than like a prognosis of real events in the real world. This is as true of today's complex proposals as it was of the Abbé de Saint-Pierre's plan for perpetual peace in Europe 250 years ago. Some essential element has clearly been lacking in all these schemes. One of our first tasks was to try to bring this missing quality into definable focus, and we believe we have succeeded in doing so. We find that at the heart of every peace study we have examined, from the modest technological proposal, an example, to convert a poison gas plant to the production of socially useful equivalents, to the most elaborate scenario for universal peace in our time, lies one common fundamental misconception. It is the source of the miasma of unreality surrounding such plans. It is the incorrect assumption that war as an institution is subordinate to the social systems it is believed to serve. This misconception, although profound and far-reaching, is entirely comprehensible. Few social cliches are so unquestioningly accepted as the notion that war is an extension of diplomacy, or of politics, or of the pursuit of economic objectives. If this were true, it would be wholly appropriate for economists and political theorists to look on the problems of transition to peace as essentially mechanical or procedural, as indeed they do, treating them as logistic corollaries of the settlement of national conflicts of interest. If this were true, there would be no real substance to the difficulties of transition, for it is evident that even in today's world there exists no conceivable conflict of interest, real or imaginary, between nations or between social forces within nations that cannot be resolved without recourse to war, if such resolution were assigned a priority of social value. And if this were true, the economic analyses and disarmament proposals we have referred to, plausible and well conceived as they may be, would not inspire, as they do, an inescapable sense of indirection. The point is that the cliche is not true, and the problems of transition are indeed substantive rather than merely procedural, although war is used as an instrument of national and social policy. The fact that a society is organized for any degree of readiness for war supersedes its political and economic structure. War itself is the basic social system within which other secondary modes of social organization conflict or conspire. It is the system which has governed most human societies of record as it is today. Once this is correctly understood, the true magnitude of the problems entailed in a transition to peace, itself a social system, but without precedent, except in a few simple pre-industrial societies, becomes apparent. At the same time, some of the puzzling superficial contradictions of modern societies can then be readily rationalized. The unnecessary size and power of the world war industry, the preeminence of the military establishment in every society, whether open or concealed, the exemption of military or paramilitary institutions from the accepted social and legal standards of behavior required elsewhere in the society, the successful operations of the armed forces and the armaments producers entirely outside the framework of each nation's economic ground rules. These and other ambiguities closely associated with the relationship of war to society are easily clarified once the priority of war-making potential as a principal structuring force in society is accepted. Economic systems, political philosophies, and corpora juris serve and extend the war system, not vice versa. It must be emphasized that the precedence of a society's war-making potential over its other characteristics is not the result of the threat presumed to exist at any one time from other societies. This is the reserve of the basic situation. Threats against the national interests are usually created or accelerated to meet the changing needs of the war system. Let me read that again. It must be emphasized that the precedence of a society's war-making potential over its other characteristics is not the result of the threat presumed to exist at any one time from other societies. This is the reverse of the basic situation. Threats against the national interest are usually created. Threats against the national interest are usually created or accelerated to meet the changing needs of the war system. Only in comparatively recent times has it been considered politically expedient to euphemize war budgets as defense requirements. The necessity for governments to distinguish between aggression, bad, and defense, good, has been a byproduct of rising literacy and rapid communication. The distinction is tactical only, a concession to the growing inadequacy of ancient war organizing political rationales. Wars are not caused by international conflicts of interest. Proper logical sequence would make it more often accurate to say that war-making societies require and thus bring about such conflicts. The capacity of a nation to make war expresses the greatest social power it can exercise. War-making, active or contemplated, is a matter of life and death on the greater scale, subject to social control. It should therefore hardly be surprising that the military institutions in each society claim its highest priorities. We find further that most of the confusion surrounding the myth that war-making is a tool of state policy stems from a general misapprehension of the functions of war. In general, these are conceived as to defend a nation from military attack by another, or to deter such an attack, to defend or advance a national interest, economic, political, ideological, to maintain or increase a nation's military power for its own sake. These are the visible or ostensible functions of war. If there were no others, the importance of the war establishment in each society might in fact decline to the subordinate level it is believed to occupy, and the elimination of war would indeed be the procedural matter that the disarmament scenarios suggest. But there are other broader, more profoundly felt functions of war in modern societies. It is these invisible or implied functions that maintain war readiness as the dominant force in our societies, and it is the unwillingness or inability of the writers of disarmament scenarios and reconversion plans to take them into account that has so reduced the usefulness of their work, and that has made it seem unrelated to the world we know. And that ends Section 4, War and Peace as Social Systems, and then we will pick up the next video in the longer section, Section 5, the Functions of War. Now we will get into the meat of this study. Hang in there.